14th, 1992.
Tonight, experience a moment of crisis. The plane is going down.
USAir jetliner skidded off the runway.
Some will live to tell the tale.
Next thing I remember, water came in. It's like someone just opened up the floodgates.
Survivors of USAir Flight 405 take you through a night of tragedy and a night of miracles.
Something snapped. Something said, you're going to get out of here. You have to get out. You have to try.
A primetime investigation.
He took me by the hair of my head and started slamming the back of my head onto a concrete floor.
We'll go to Mississippi to investigate charges inmates at the Harrison County Jail have been viciously beaten by deputy sheriffs.
How many beatings did you witness?
I would have to say at least 50 or better.
But when some deputy sheriffs tried to blow the whistle, they say no one would listen.
They didn't want to talk to me because it was a cover-up.
She's an intelligent, successful woman who is boldly...
Get away from her, you bitch!
And now boldly gone where no one's gone before. Tonight, Sigourney Weaver talks about life and the pressures of stardom on the eve of her big summer movie.
If Alien does well, I will get maybe a little bit of credit. If it doesn't, it will be blamed on me.
Judd Rose learns about the way things really work for women in Hollywood.
Bruce Willis can make a bunch of pictures that don't make any money, and yet they still think that the audience will come out to see him.
And a dramatic development following our investigation last week into Deadbeat Dad.
Tim, your children want to see you. Your children want to see you. They want to see their father.
Well, not here, not now.
Why? No, they want to see their father.
Okay, you're not one.
These are his children. Oh, then he doesn't want his children?
Find out what happened to one of the fathers who ran out on his family, leaving his kids with no support.
From ABC News, with anchors Diane Sawyer in New York, Sam Donaldson in Washington, Chief Correspondent Chris Wallace, Judd Rose, Jay Shadler, Sylvia Chase, and John Quinones. This is Prime Time.
Ladies and gentlemen, feast your eyes on the elegant new J30. A classic luxury sedan in an Infiniti kind of way. A driver's car with 2 airbags, soft leather appointments, and tasty wood. Hey, pal, don't you even think about it. The new J30 from Infiniti.
Right now, every gallon of paint is on sale at Sears. Every interior, every exterior. Save 10 to 33% on Weather Beater, Easy Living, Dutch Boy, Olympic Stain, and more. But hurry, sale ends Sunday at Sears.
You're taking clients to dinner, then 4 more show up. You don't worry about a preset limit on a bank card. Instead, you order more wine. The American Express card. Don't leave home without it.
Prime Time. From New York, Diane Sawyer.
Good evening. Tonight, something a little different for us. We are going to begin by taking you directly into a moment of crisis. 8 weeks ago this Sunday, an unusually snowy March night, a USAir jet carrying 51 people started its takeoff from LaGuardia Airport in New York. The flight had originated in Florida and was heading for Ohio. But within seconds, the plane plunged into the icy waters of Flushing Bay, killing 27 people, including the pilot. Although the cause of the crash is not yet official, the leading theory is there was too much ice on the wings. Well, tonight, we are going to revisit those seconds. We gathered around some of the 24 people who survived, their rescuers and family members of others. And then we set our cameras out to help illustrate and recreate the things they told us about USAir Flight 405.
If I could go and design amusement parks, I would want to design one called Plane Crash, because that would be one that people would not forget. It's a hell of a ride, man.
My husband and I had been in Florida at a medical conference and enjoying the golf courses and just having, partly vacation and partly business. And we got up on Sunday, and because the flight was late, we had a very leisurely breakfast. We went and sat by the pool and read until it was time to go to the airport.
We were a little bit late leaving Jacksonville to LaGuardia, and I believe it was the weather was the problem there.
At 6 o'clock, it's 32 degrees with light snow now in Midtown Manhattan. A winter storm warning is...
It was one of those typical things where they delay it a half hour and a half hour and a half hour. I think everybody was really anxious just to get in the flight and get going because we were, almost 2 hours late getting off to Cleveland. I just stood there kind of looking at everybody. You do that scan and search. You look for all the pretty girls first, then you look at all the people just sitting there and what they're doing, and it's kind of make mental notes.
There was a gentleman there who was a ticket agent for USAir who recognized me from all my children and asked me, did I want to fly first class? My seat number was 6A, and he put me up to 1F at the last minute.
We boarded 47 passengers out of LaGuardia.
I was sitting right on the wing, so I was able to see the snow and things accumulating, and I curled up and laid down and tried to take a little nap while we were waiting because we were going to be delayed again.
The pilot had told us that the plane was going to be de-iced, and I remember seeing the ice crystals in the outside of the window being washed away by the de-icing fluid.
We de-iced once, and as time went by, the captain came on and said we need to de-ice again.
And I remember this guy saying, nah, he should go for it. Let's just go for it. He doesn't need to have de-iced again. He's being too cautious. Let's just go.
I never worried about Wally flying. He's always told me, honey, don't worry. I'm very careful.
Hi, honey bunny. It's 11 o'clock. It's a Saturday night. And
he left a message on my answer machine saying he'd call back tonight. So I was just waiting for him to call me Sunday night.
I guess it was close to 9 o'clock. When they finally pushed back from the gate.
Our F-28 4000 is equipped with an automatic oxygen system. Should there be a loss in cabin pressure?
I remember the captain coming on saying there's about 6 or 7 airplanes in front of us, so we'll be about 10 minutes before we take off.
I say 10 minutes? It's going to take a half an hour at least. And it took about a half an hour.
We sat there and watched the planes take off one right after another.
And I could see the snow whipping down. It was a crusty, shiny, icy type of snow, not the kind that once you start taking off would blow off.
And I'm sitting there and I'm feeling more and more uncomfortable. And I want to go and knock on his door and say, they didn't do this plane right. They didn't de-ice this plane the way they should have.
Assumed that everything was okay. I remember thinking that, well, the pilot's on the same plane and he wouldn't take off if he didn't think it was safe.
I don't let stuff like that go, but I let this go.
LaGuardia Tower, Kilometer 274, approaching dial.
Signal gate 274, LaGuardia Tower, number 4.
Finally, it was our turn to go. And I just reached over and took my husband's hand, and I looked at him, I said, well, good luck, here we go.
It didn't feel to me like we were accelerating as fast as I normally feel.
And I feel the plane is slow.
I sensed that we had a liftoff.
Just floated up.
As if there wasn't enough lift under the left wing.
I felt the plane dropped quickly in this rumble.
And I grip a little bit. Oh.
This doesn't sound good. And right after that, the plane tilted to the left.
The left wing must have hit the ground or hit something.
The pilot tried to correct it by bringing it back to the runway.
I heard people screaming, oh my God, oh my God.
And I said to my husband, we're going down, we're going to crash.
In the next couple seconds, we slammed into the ground.
It hit down hard and then hit down down hard again, and I saw it flash out the window, and then it rolled.
And I could feel myself rolling with the plane. The seat is being twisted. I'm being twisted with the seat. A feeling of complete and utter helplessness.
We wound up settling upside down in the bay.
It was a big flash, a big orange ball of fire. I grabbed the radio. Central, we have a confirmed plane down at LaGuardia Airport. And she kind of like answered me back like she didn't believe me.
Interrupt WXYZ's regularly scheduled programming to bring you the USAir jet fighter en route to coincide the crash and exploded on the runway at the USAir jetliner skidded off the runway and landed partially on land and partially in Flushing Bay. Witnesses at the scene say it appears.
The next thing I remember, water came in. It's like someone just opened up the floodgates and then just so much water came in. It was just so powerful. The water was so powerful.
I am upside down in the water, like the world was on top of me because I felt pinned and trapped upside down.
And I was upside down in my seat. I felt salt water and jet fuel pouring down over me.
We heard the police harbor launch come over the radio. The extent of the injuries start running through your mind, exactly how many people are involved.
I was telling my roommate that my father flew a Fokker F-28. No sooner I get the words out of my mouth that flashed on the screen, plane went down, blah, 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 Fokker F-28.
Usually if there was an air crash, Wally would call us just to tell us, don't worry, I'm fine. And, you know, he hadn't called.
Have submerged in the water. Witnesses at the
And I can't move. And I began to try to accept this process of being in the water and drowning. And in my mind said, you know, be peaceful. Just go to the other side peacefully.
I don't think at that moment I would have minded drowning. I just felt something going through my body that completely relaxed me.
I mean, I'm closing my eyes, and I was waiting for the bright light to come, just thinking, this is it. I just closed my eyes, thinking, okay, don't let it hurt.
And then all of a sudden, something in me said, no, reject this idea, you know, take the seatbelt off. Get out of here. Get this stuff off of you.
Something snapped. Something said, you're going to get out of here. You have to get out. You have to try. I said, think, Yasser, think. What is it that could be holding you? And I remembered the seatbelt still tied.
I find my way to the surface, and I'm disoriented because I'm not sure that it's air that I'm breathing. I'm thinking that it's water that I'm taking in.
I grabbed my seat cushion, and I started climbing up on top of the wreckage. It was really very tranquil, complete and utter silence.
And then the fire flared.
The same fire which is at the same time burning people up in the airplane, that's the way that we stayed warm.
It seemed like the rescuers didn't get there forever.
Poor weather conditions delayed.
5 minutes seems like it could have been 2 hours. I saw the plane billowing up, and I was close, too close to the plane. And at that time, a gentleman came over and picked me up. He saw my leg. He says, are you okay? And I said, my leg hurts. I couldn't walk.
And we just looked at each other, and that's when I realized that she was a flight attendant. Because the thing I noticed about her were her eyes. I noticed them as I came on the plane.
He lifted me up and took care of me, just carried me across a little hill and everything, and I was just holding on to his neck, and he just had the energy and the power and the strength and just took me and made sure I was okay.
I called my husband's name about 4 times. I yelled it out and never heard his voice. The next thing I heard, somebody said, hey, lady, you have to get out of here. Go toward the light. Do you see the light?
Ambulances and fire trucks with all their red lights flashing, coming in our direction, and I thought, finally, we're going to get some help.
It was a surreal scene. As we were going down the runway, you could see bits of flaming debris of the plane, parts of the wing that had broken off, parts of the landing gear.
Joe was the first one into the water. We went out to the cockpit, which was upside down. He's starting to get a little nervous as to how close I can get to this fire with the fuel all around us.
There were bodies scattered amongst the fuselage in the water, some in their seats, some floating around the debris with the plane.
We had to cut our way down through fuel lines, all sorts of metal, just to get down to where these people were. And the way the plane was contorted and twisted and broken up, you would have to just hold your breath and go down under the water and just grope around and feel, and hopefully, you know, that you would find something.
I still don't understand how anybody walked away from that.
This guy with a hooded sweatshirt came up, and I said something to the effect of, "Help me, please, help me." And he said, "You're on all my children."
You're lying on this stretcher and you're looking up and you see tops of heads and tops of bodies, and that was the one time that I kept thinking that I'd see my husband walk in.
Fate is a funny thing. My seat is moved. I live, and death takes place in the row that I was in.
Once I had really realized it set in that my father was probably gone, losing him was bad enough, as just having to see it on national TV in front of me, seeing the nose of that plane in the water. Knowing my daddy was down in that cold water, it hurt me worse than the fact that he was gone.
I have thought very little about my husband's death. It's much easier to do that here because I'm isolated. I'm in a foreign surrounding anyway. He's not part of this life anyway, so that I don't have to face that, and I have just not faced it.
USAir. He's the one who saved me and carried me to safety. He came, and he came to visit me, and he brought me this little bear. And,
The day that I opened the door and I saw Debbie sitting there, that was, I think, the happiest moment of my entire life. I think everybody was a hero that night. People were helping people. Everybody who survived that night was a hero. And in their own way, the people that died that night were heroes too.
One more note. Since that crash, the FAA has said that it's going to come up with new rules about taking off in snowy or icy weather. The decision is no longer going to be up to the pilots alone.
Next, we'll take you to a place that seems to be a throwback in time, to the days when good old boys ruled and no one messed with the sheriff.
Call me paranoid, but you could get run off the road. Dangerous to take on the law.
And still to come, she's beautiful, brainy, and loaded with talent. Tonight, a side of Sigourney Weaver you've never seen.
Thank you, darling Richard.
When Primetime continues.
With the uncertainty of today's real estate market, many would-be home buyers have adopted a wait-and-see attitude. Your Coldwell Banker agent, on the other hand, thinks it's time to wake up to the possibilities. Home prices may never be this affordable again. Interest rates may never be this attractive. Altogether, it's a great time to buy a home. All it takes is opening your eyes to the opportunities and knowing who to call. Coldwell Banker. Expect the best.
Attention to detail in the Mitsubishi Diamante LS goes much deeper than luxury and comfort. It includes traction control, advanced technology associated with Lexus and Infiniti. Diamante's traction control is part of a comprehensive safety system that reflects Mitsubishi's idea of luxury. The Diamante LS from Mitsubishi. The word is getting around.
If I had a choice, I wouldn't get them. My second choice, a fast cure. Gyne-Lotrimin starts working fast to help you bring recurring vaginal yeast infections under control quickly. My choice now, Gyne-Lotrimin. Make your choice a fast cure.
Whirlpool believes a great washer is one you rarely ever think about. Solidly built to do its job for years without a second thought. If you want a washer so well built you don't have to think about it, think about Whirlpool.
Why is the new phone card from Sprint not just another calling card? Now your card number is based on your home number, so it's easy to use. It'll deliver a message for you, even to someone whose line is busy. Lets you set up your own three-way conference calls. Info hotline lets you check stocks, weather, sports, even news. Call now and it even comes with 100 minutes free. Try getting all that with another phone company's calling card.
A terrifying trend in auto theft. Stop at a light, and it's your car or your life. Carjackers, plus the notorious Ivan Boesky. What was life like with the king of insider trading? His estranged wife tells me on 2020, Friday.
Saturday features a current big shot and a former long shot. First leading money winner Fred Couples and the PGA's best tee it up at the GTE Byron Nelson Classic. Then on ABC's Wide World of Sports, Kentucky Derby winner Lily T goes after the second jewel in the Chrysler Triple Crown Challenge, the Preakness Stakes. It's all live Saturday on ABC Sports.
Primetime continues. Now from Washington, Sam Donaldson.
Now a primetime investigation. How much evidence do you need to get a conviction these days? That's what people were asking after the Rodney King police trial, and what you may be asking after our next report. It's about 4 deputy sheriffs from Harrison County, Mississippi, who say they saw their fellow officers beating inmates. When they decided to blow the whistle, they figured they had a strong case. But as Sylvia Chase reports, they ended up feeling there was justice for none after going public with their stories.
The beatings went on how often?
All the time. All the time.
Andy, how many beatings do you think you've seen?
About a dozen.
I would have to say at least 50 or better.
The whistleblowers, Boyce Grayson, Tony Lewis, Andrea Gibbs, and Will Williams, came forward to name this man, Lieutenant Homer McKnight, Jr., as the ringleader of a group of sadistic deputy sheriffs who brutally beat inmates, including juveniles, without provocation.
Comments were made that if you can't run with the big dogs, stay on the porch.
And by that they meant if you can't put up with beating prisoners,
right,
get out?
They would even teach you how to beat a prisoner without leaving any scars.
Primetime has interviewed 15 inmates who say they were beaten.
He took me by the hair of my head and started slamming the back of my head onto a concrete floor.
The sergeant had beat me in the top of the head with a billy club.
One guy was punching me in the face as the other guy was punching and kicking me in the side.
Remember, this is Mississippi, the civil rights battleground of the 60s, marked by the murder of civil rights activist Medgar Evers and the deaths of voter registration workers at the hands of the Ku Klux Klan. But this is southernmost Mississippi, the Gulf Coast, an area mostly untouched by that history. And these days in Harrison County, it's still not considered wise to take on the local sheriff.
Call me paranoid, but you could get run off the road. It's dangerous to take on the law.
But the whistleblowing deputies say it was necessary for them to take on the law because of what they called routine and savage beatings at the Old County Jail and the Youth Detention Center, where nearly 1,000 inmates were potential victims. They say they first saw the violence at the Youth Detention Center in October '88.
How long was it before you witnessed your first beating?
About 3 hours into my first shift.
Gibbs and Lewis say Lieutenant Homer McKnight, Jr., who had just been put in charge of the youth jail, led several deputies in beating and gagging a 16-year-old girl. Then, say the ex-deputies, Lieutenant McKnight gave them a warning. Keep your mouth shut and go along.
They called us into an office and said, look, we're not allowed to gag inmates. We're not allowed to do that, so you didn't see any of this.
It was like if you value your job, you didn't see it either. And like we valued our job, we just had to hush for a while.
They were in a bind, tormented by what they were seeing, afraid to say anything.
What do I say? Who do I go to? You know, my supervisor was the one that doing most of the beating.
Altogether, former deputies Gibbs and Lewis say they saw Lieutenant Homer McKnight, Jr. beat 11 inmates, mostly juveniles.
It was choking me, and I couldn't breathe.
At the time, Matthew McDuffie was 14, arrested for theft.
Homer was slapping him upside the head. At one point, he grabbed Matthew around the throat and lifted him off the floor and slammed him into a Coke machine.
Travis Lewis was also 14 years old, in jail for robbery.
Homer McKnight Jr. grabbed Travis by the throat, slammed him down on the floor.
He started kicking me in my back and my rib with his boot as I was laying on the floor.
Travis Lewis's father, Gordon, visited his son the next day.
The handprint was still on his throat.
There were fingerprints on his throat?
I asked him, I said, what is that mark? He said, that's where he grabbed me and choked me down.
The former deputies say Lieutenant McKnight took perverse pleasure in the beatings.
He thrived on it. You know, he would beat on a kid and then sit around and talk about it for 2 hours. Oh, well, that little one made me mad, so I did this and that and the other. Ha, 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 ha. I was scared to death of him. I still am.
Harrison County Sheriff Joe Price says the whistleblowers are malcontents, and any blows delivered by Lieutenant McKnight were justified.
I've never said that Homer did not strike a child, but was that child fighting him? I think that's the issue. Did the child strike him?
I've talked to 15 who say that there were unprovoked beatings committed on them. Are they all making it up?
These are lawbreakers. These are lawbreakers. Why won't they tell you a lie?
Sheriff Price also denies that he was warned about Lieutenant McKnight's violence. But Tony Lewis recalls speaking to Price on February 6, 1989.
I said, man, y'all don't know what's going on at the detention center. Homer is beating those kids. I said, and they are abusing these kids over here. Joe Price told me to my face, Lewis, you got an attitude problem.
Feeling that no one within the department cared, by mid-1989, the deputies were finding it harder and harder to keep quiet.
As long as I stood there and said nothing, I may as well have been down the hall beating on them and abusing them just the same as everybody else. I was no better than they were.
So the deputies called a news conference to tell what they'd seen. The next morning, they were fired. But at least it was out in the open now. There'd be investigations. The deputies were optimistic.
I thought that we were formidable. One of us, they could beat us down. 2 of us, yeah. But 4 of us? How could they discredit all 4 of us and ignore all 4 of us?
Here's how. There were 4 investigations by the sheriff, a county grand jury, the state attorney general, and the FBI. But it's charged they all amounted to a whitewash. Remember Matthew McDuffie?
It was choking me, and I couldn't breathe.
Former Deputy Andrea Gibbs says that she witnessed Matthew's beating, but the sheriff's investigator ignored Gibbs and cleared Lieutenant McKnight. Then there was an investigation by the Mississippi State Attorney General.
I believe that the children had been hit. I talked to several who said they had been hit.
Assistant Attorney General Pat Flynn was in charge, and following an inquiry that took just 2 days, Flynn assured the community that children were in no peril. Why?
As far as beating, I think there is a difference between hitting and beating.
What is the difference between hitting and beating?
I don't think any of the children had any injuries.
Now it was the county grand jury's turn to investigate. The grand jury heard from 2 of the whistleblowing deputies and from 13 inmates and ex-inmates who swore they'd been beaten. Several of them named Lieutenant Homer McKnight, Jr.
Homer McKnight came and told his story, and the grand jury believed it.
Joe Meadows, then county district attorney, presented the evidence to the grand jury.
We chose, the grand jury chose not to indict Homer McKnight, Jr. because there was not sufficient evidence to get a conviction. That is the long and the short of it.
Forrest Bennett was grand jury foreman. Do you recall how many witnesses said that they had been beaten by Homer McKnight?
No, I don't, but there were a great many of them. Sure were.
But you didn't find any of them believable?
No, we didn't.
You didn't believe them because they had records, or...
That part of it, yes. Yes.
So despite all those who said Lieutenant McKnight was a beater, he walked free. But the grand jury did indict someone, Boyce Grayson, one of the whistleblowing deputies, on 1 beating charge. Grayson was later convicted and is appealing.
Boyce Grayson was railroaded.
Mark Marquardt, formerly head of the Mississippi ACLU.
I couldn't believe their arrogance, and I was just so stunned because it's like, not only are we not going to respond as a grand jury to any of the evidence we've been given, we are going to play along with the powers that be and indict one of the people that came forward.
And grand jury foreman Bennett has had a change of heart. After thinking it over for 2.5 years and listening to the results of Primetime's investigation, he wished the grand jury could meet again.
If I had to do it all over again, I would, if I was a betting man, I would almost bet you that I'd indict Homer McKnight, yes. I don't like to admit that. No one likes to admit a mistake.
There was also an investigation by the FBI, historically aggressive in its prosecution of civil rights cases in the South. But in this case, it's charged that the FBI failed to interview eyewitnesses to 3 alleged beatings. For example, the case of Mark Parker, investigated by FBI agent George Holder.
That first lick was a slap, and then he continued to hit me after that.
Mark Parker, who was arrested on a drug charge, says he was beaten in the Harrison County Jail by a deputy named Bill Collins.
Sergeant Collins slapped Mark around a couple of times. He choked him, and I witnessed the whole thing.
Did FBI agent Holder contact you?
No, he didn't.
He didn't?
Never talked to the guy. I don't even know the guy.
In June 1989, Parker's family got a letter from the Justice Department saying their investigation found no criminal violations of federal law and the case would be closed. Tony Lewis draws only one conclusion about Agent Holder's failure to contact him.
They didn't want to talk to me because it was a cover-up.
The FBI declined to be interviewed on camera. In a letter, the agency denies any cover-up, saying it did a thorough investigation, including interviews with the whistleblowing deputies. But the FBI acknowledges those interviews occurred 4 months after the Justice Department closed the Parker case. So you have the Attorney General's office looking into it, you have the FBI looking into it, and you have a grand jury.
Right.
Nothing happens.
Right. 3 strikes and you're out.
These days, Sheriff Price shows off his new state-of-the-art county jail. And Warden Rick Gaston, a Harrison County native and ex-Marine who runs the jails for Sheriff Price, doles out advice to inmates.
There's rules everywhere. There's rules for you, there's rules for me, there's rules for the sheriff, there's rules for everybody. And the sooner you learn to go by them, the better off you are.
But there are charges that Gaston has his own set of rules.
Rick Gaston hit me with the blackjack.
Leroy Coleman is one of 2 inmates we talked to who said Gaston beat them. Coleman, jailed on a burglary charge, says that in January 1991, Gaston and others, including Homer McKnight Jr., escalated an argument into a beating.
They got me down on the floor and they went kicking me and stomping me, kicked me all in the side.
Coleman has filed a civil rights lawsuit against Gaston over the alleged beating. Gaston states that Coleman refused to come out of his cell during a search, and several officers wrestled him to the floor, cuffed him, and carried him out.
I never touched Leroy Coleman. And if Leroy Coleman says that I struck him with a baton, a police baton, or any other object, he's lying.
We arranged a lie detector test. Coleman failed on questions about charges he was kept in jail to get him to drop his lawsuit. But on the question of being beaten, Coleman passed, according to the examiner, with flying colors.
Are you lying when saying that Doherty, Warden Gaston, and other officers didn't kick you while in your cell and in the day room?
No.
I want you to know that Leroy Coleman passed a lie detector test as to the truthfulness of the alleged beating incident.
If he passed it, fine, he passed it.
Would you take a lie detector test, Captain?
No, ma'am, I will not.
Why?
Because I'm not required to. I don't have to. If he wishes to sue me, we will settle this matter in court.
And what about Lieutenant Homer McKnight Jr.? He was transferred out of the Youth Detention Center, but is still responsible for guarding prisoners. We tried to talk to him about all of this.
Yeah, the children tell us that, tell Primetime Live that you are the ringleader of a gang that was beating them at the Youth Detention Center. What do you have to say about that?
I have no comment.
You have no comment? Why would you talk to us?
I don't have to.
Did you beat the children, Lieutenant McKnight? Lieutenant, why won't you talk to us?
When we come back, we'll leave it to Weaver. Sigourney Weaver, when Primetime continues after this from our ABC stations.
Sunday. In a land far away, there is a golden river. A river of beauty and danger. A river of mystery and of life. Explore all the secrets of the Golden River on an all-new ABC World of Discovery, Sunday.
This is a Channel 7 Action News Brief with Diana Lewis.
Good evening, everyone. It began with a man getting a ticket for eating ice cream. Tonight, this is how it's unfolding.
No! Ice cream, yes! Kroger, no!
We'll bring you the very latest on a protest by Kroger strikers. New developments tonight in the search for a missing 10-year-old. We'll have complete coverage. Hear from the woman whose desperate move shocked doctors. She tried to remove her silicone gel implants. And tonight, the crew of the Shuttle Endeavor pulls off another fantastic feat. That's all coming up tonight on The Update.
For WCSX, Alice Cooper.
Detroit's only all-classic rock and roll is 94.7 WCSX. Take it from Alice Cooper.
Thank you letters keep coming in for the Arbor pharmacies. Here's one from a woman who had her prescription filled at an Arbor in Taylor after first trying 3 different competitors who didn't have the drug in stock. And here's a letter from a man thanking an Arbor in Rochester Hills for honoring his new health insurance plan when he changed jobs. The man's previous drugstore didn't. At Arbor, it's not just saving you time and money. It's giving you the personal service you deserve. The Arbor Pharmacy. You can't get any better.
Sex tips from gigolos and exotic dancers. Next, Kelly.
And now the latest news about our investigation last week into fathers who don't pay child support, who live well while their children live in virtual poverty.
Inside, he just broke my heart in half.
We told you about Katie and Mike Tokles, who ended up on welfare after their father, Tim Tokles, walked out. He claimed he was practically broke, but we discovered he was living in a house with a pool and driving a Mercedes. Assets all listed in his parents' name. Well, yesterday, Tim Tokles was arrested in Toledo, Ohio, on a warrant issued by the state attorney's office in Florida, where his children live. He was released on his own recognizance, but Florida officials say they're going to extradite him back to their state to face charges of desertion and withholding child support. Many of you responded to the plight of Katie and Mike Tokles.
ACES, may I help you?
ACES, the Toledo-based group that helps families collect child support, set up a special fund after so many people called offering money and free legal and medical care. And what about the other children you saw in our piece? Well, this past weekend, Jonathan Brooks and his father spent more time together, talking about how things can change in their future. But Chip Mindrup wasn't so lucky. Remember his father, the nuclear engineer with a nice home and Corvette? The father who reacted like this to the son he hadn't seen in 8 years.
I don't care. And what's more, I don't care if I ever see you again. Do you understand that?
We told you last week Mr. Mindrup wanted to respond on camera to give his side of the story. But after seeing the footage we had of him, Mindrup's lawyer said his client would have no comment. And finally, in Washington this week, Congressman Henry Hyde and Tom Downey from opposite sides of the political spectrum got together to propose some landmark legislation. It would set up a central registry and would, for the first time, authorize the IRS to collect child support. More of Primetime in a moment.
Sold!
Let's say you bought a painting. Let's say Van Gogh's sunflowers. Let's say you used the Discover card. You'd have a little money coming back. Because with the Discover card, every single charge earns an annual cashback bonus.
Nice.
It pays to Discover, the card that pays you back.
You know, we grow together, and the bond just gets stronger and stronger. It's amazing.
That friend all of a sudden disappears, or but your sister will always be there.
Sister, she got married and left.
The Reed sisters have always shared what matters, and they share a belief in Dove. Dove contains 1/4 moisturizing cream. It won't dry your face like soap.
You feel the moisture in the skin, and the moisture to me is the most important part. Very, very important, because if this looks dry, forget it.
In the world of luxury automobiles, you expect aerodynamic styling. A beautifully crafted, leather-trimmed interior, the uncompromising safety of driver's and passenger side airbags, and the superior performance of a 24-valve engine. You just don't expect it to be so affordable. The Acura Luxury Lease Program. It's more than a lease. It's a legend.
Mighty Dog presents Casey. Pound for pound, he uses up more energy than most dogs twice his size. That's why we make Mighty Dog, with the perfect balance of nutrients. It does big things for little dogs.
So I'm barbecuing for 30. I got the best steaks, I got the cheap charcoal, and I got burned.
Fire's out.
Don't get burned by cheap charcoal. Buy the best.
Kingsford, the surefire.
St. Jerome's Hospital.
John Travolta.
Breathe deep, breathe deep. Try to help me just fine.
Kirstie Alley.
Give me that run. Oh, thank you really a lot.
Look Who's Talking Sunday.
Put me back in. Put me back in.
From talk shows to tabloid headlines.
Bembenek was an ex-pinup girl, ex-cop who killed her husband's ex-wife.
She was a calendar girl.
This you?
You guys are all alike.
She was a cop.
She claims the MPD framed her for murder.
But was she a killer?
I didn't do it.
The Bambi Bembenek story. Monday.
In all of Hollywood, there's only one woman who can stand alongside Schwarzenegger, Mel Gibson, Bruce Willis as one of those towering heroes of the big action films, like the new Alien 3. There's just something different about Sigourney Weaver, a certain strength, a certain classiness that allows her to do and say things that, by Hollywood standards anyway, are dangerously provocative. Something about her that led the crusty veteran actor Hume Cronin to call her just a real down-to-earth broad. Judd Rose takes us to meet Sigourney Weaver.
She's bad. She's bold. She's back. And this time, she's bald.
Would it be fair to say that you are the sexiest bald woman in movie history?
Well, I'm sure you say that to all the bald women you know.
Not that there's much competition. Aren't too many movie queens who'd part with their hair for a part in a film. But Sigourney Weaver didn't become a star by going the glamour route.
Get away from her, you bitch!
Rambo, Rocky, Dirty Harry, it's Ripley, believe it or not, the indestructible heroine of the science fiction classic Alien and its equally acclaimed sequel. In the macho world of action movies, here was a first, a tough, take-charge woman. Playing her helped make Sigourney Weaver one of the most bankable actresses in movies. Her last 4 films alone have earned $417 million. And she's on the cover of the current Premiere magazine with its list of the 100 most powerful people in Hollywood.
I saw you were not on the list.
Yes, it is ironic to have a woman on the cover of the list issue, which has about 4 women on it. But
how powerful are you?
Oh, I don't think I'm powerful.
No?
Probably not. I mean, if Alien does well, I will get maybe a little bit of credit. If it doesn't, it will be blamed on me. I can guarantee it. And they'll say, oh, a woman couldn't carry this picture, you know.
Understand, Weaver isn't asking for sympathy.
Movie stars are paid a hell of a lot of money, and why should we complain? But when I see Frankie and Johnny, that Al Pacino gets paid twice what Michelle Pfeiffer gets paid, or something like that, I wonder why.
Why indeed? Pacino got $6 million. Pfeiffer, arguably a bigger star, got $3 million. But Hollywood's unwritten rule is that male stars almost always get more. Take Bruce Willis. Last year, he smirked his way through 4 straight flops, which together lost roughly $135 million.
If Bruce Willis were the star of the new Alien film, would he have been paid more than you?
Much more. Much more.
That's just a given.
Oh, yes. One of the executives at Fox, when I was negotiating for this, because I believed in the principle very much that if they had paid Mr. Willis a certain amount for Die Hard 2, that in fact for Alien 3 I should be paid at least that. And he said I would be embarrassed to pay you that.
Weaver had to fight for it, but she got $5.5 million. That's one of the richest deals ever for an actress, but it's still $2 million less than what Bruce Willis got paid for Die Hard 2.
And Bruce Willis can make a bunch of pictures that don't make any money, and yet they still think that the audience will come out to see him. It's definitely a double standard.
Few of Hollywood's big names would argue with that, but almost none are willing to talk about it so openly. After all, publicly criticizing studio bosses is generally regarded as a bad career move. But Sigourney Weaver isn't afraid of the show business establishment. She's been part of it from the day she was born.
Her mother, Elizabeth Inglis, is a former British stage actress. Her uncle, Doodles Weaver, was a well-known comic actor, and her father, Pat Weaver, president of NBC in the 50s, is also one of the fathers of TV's golden age. Among his enduring creations, The Tonight Show and The Today Show. Weaver comes by her patrician bearing rightfully. She grew up in a world of privilege, the right address, the right schools. But she was a big girl. By age 11, she was nearly 6 feet.
If you're this tall when you're 11, nobody wants to dance with you at dancing school. I finally said to my mother, look, this dancing school thing, no more, you know, because it was just too painful.
Were you klutzy? Did you bump into the furniture?
Oh, everything, yes. I mean, I was just a walking disaster.
Her given name was Susan, but she thought that was too short for such a tall girl. One day, while reading The Great Gatsby, she came upon a character named Sigourney.
I thought it looked nice. It was nice and curvy and long.
Your father objected.
I think they were a little taken aback, but on the other hand, his name was Sylvester and he was called Pat, and my mother's name was Desiree and she was called Liz, so who are they to talk, you know? My uncle was an Uncle Doodle, you know.
Despite her unorthodox name, Sigourney followed a predictable path. She was a debutante, went to Stanford and then the Yale Drama School. After that came several years of work in cabaret shows and off-Broadway theater.
How the hell did that happen?
Then, in 1978, she screen tested for a part in a science fiction film, a part originally written for a man.
I thought, well, that's her. I mean, this almost never happens in movies, but this is one time it really did.
Alien quickly turned an unknown into a cover girl, and Weaver went on to become one of the movie's most versatile leading ladies. Along with her glamorous looks, she had a wide range, from steely to steamy to downright silly.
Are we still going out?
You want this body?
Is this a trick question?
Take me now, sub-creature.
We never talk anymore.
Hit films, rave reviews, 3 Oscar nominations. Weaver quickly became an actress of great stature, in more ways than one. Over 5'11" in bare feet, in heels, she towers over many men, but only one ever complained.
Chevy wasn't thrilled with my being his, I mean, he's a big guy.
6'4", right?
Yes, I was looking eye to eye with him, and I think it just sort of, he'd never experienced it before, you know. I felt badly, but I did say to him, look, you're the tallest man I've ever worked with, you know. Think of how Mel Gibson would feel.
Weaver's leading man off-screen is Jim Simpson, a stage director who works mainly off-Broadway. They met at a theater festival where she was the star and he was tending bar.
So I sort of went over like Joan of Arc, and I said, oh, hi, excuse me, would you like to dance? And he looked at me and he said, no.
No, because don't dance with the stars. I'm a bartender and I'm not supposed to do that. But of course, as she was walking away, I thought, well, I think you've made a mistake. And the rest is history.
Indeed it is. Weaver and Simpson got married. The urge to have a family came later while she was filming Gorillas in the Mist.
I remember sitting there in the muck, in the mud, in the rain, and I was being used as a trampoline by about 4 little baby gorillas, and they were jumping up and down on my stomach and pulling my hair and biting me and urinating on me, and I remember thinking, this is so great.
Inspired, she got pregnant. Daughter Charlotte is now 2. Sigourney took 3 years off to be a mother, and now she's back. Back to the future in Alien 3.
Get down!
It's been 6 years since the second Alien, and the new one has a style all its own.
More like a haunted house than a roller coaster ride, which is what people felt about the second one.
But let's just sort of get it right on the table. Is this film going to scare you down to your shorts?
Oh, gosh, yes. I think so. I think so.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Ugh.
Alien 3 finds Ripley and that nasty lizard on board a penal colony in space that's infested with lice. The first day of filming, Weaver was lying nude under a sheet when she heard the director call for bugs.
And this guy comes over and he kind of goes like that, and up my nose and into my mouth and in my ears were all these, I didn't know what they were. They just felt awful, you know, they're just, I was like, get the nurse.
After all that, the scene was cut from the film. But the unkindest cut was her haircut. In the movie, Ripley's head is shaved to ward off lice.
My husband was very sweet because he told me at the time that he thought it was very attractive, very sexy. And then months later, when it had grown back, he said, God, I really hated it, you know.
A bigger challenge for the filmmakers was raising hair. How do you scare film fans who've made this trip twice before? With a new, improved alien that can do things like run upside down. It's faster, leaner, and yes, even meaner. Of course, the basic rules haven't changed. Rule 1, never peek in a dark place. Rule 2, watch your back. And Rule 3, always, always listen to Ripley.
I'm telling you, it's here. Get the foolish woman back to the infirmary.
This reptile with a bad attitude is actually a guy in a rubber suit, or more often, a series of intricate models run by wires and pulleys. And that goo? Well, it's the stuff fast food joints use to thicken their milkshakes. So what prompts that look of pure terror?
It wasn't that hard for me with the backdrop I have of all these years of encounters with the alien as Ripley, for me to think that this was the most awful moment of my life.
The last few weeks haven't been any picnic either. With the film due out next week, Weaver's been busy reshooting the end and re-recording her dialogue. These last-minute fixes have left Hollywood breathless with rumors that Alien 3 is in trouble, and the pressure on Sigourney is all the more intense because she fought to be one of the film's producers, and she's had a say in everything from the script to the score. Remember, Sigourney says if the film flops, she'll get the blame. She, after all, is a woman operating in a man's world.
If women ran Hollywood, what would be different?
I don't know.
Frankly, she was stumped. But then, a few days later, we got a call from Sigourney. Come over to my production company, she said, and I'll show you what it would be like if women ran Hollywood.
Judd, have you met my director of development, Richard, Richard, what's your last name again?
Sims.
Richard Sims. He's indispensable. So who's on the phone?
Joe Roth.
Joe Roth, the head of Fox? Why didn't you tell me, you thing? I mean, thank you, darling, Richard.
Listen, if this is a bad time...
I'll tell you if it's a bad time. Hello, Joe. How are you? Hold on one second. Robert, haven't we discussed how when I come into the office, I'd like you to dress as a Chippendale dancer?
Do you have a problem with that?
No, Miss Weaver. I was cold.
Robert, you are a screenwriter. You have to get used to debasing yourself. Put these on.
Joe. I love Tom Cruise, but don't you think he's a little old for me? Can't we get Macaulay Culkin? He's perfect. Oh, good, darling. Thank you. Joe! Oh, I'm exhausted. I've done enough work for today. I'm going home. You look so cute, Robert. Love for sale, appetizing young love for sale.
In a moment, a program note about a special interview with John and Caroline Kennedy when Primetime continues.
Sally Brown on the uneven bars.
No matter how well you plan, no matter how hard you try, there's always the possibility that something can go wrong. That's why nobody should be without the protection of a big, strong insurance company. MetLife. Get Met. It pays.
For fun around here, me and the boys like to do something a little bit crazy. Put 2 kinds of cheese on a cheeseburger.
For a wild new taste, head to the store for 2 kinds of cheese and lean ground beef.
Cheddar and Munster. Crazy.
The guy in the new Infiniti just discovered something. about his car, and about himself. He just discovered that the 18-year-old adventurer who loved to drive never left. Seems he's just been snoozing for the last, 20 years. And his new Q45 just woke him up. Without acne. Infiniti. Makes you want to take up driving again, doesn't it?
Put a luggage cart and a suitcase, and what do you get? Samsonite's piggyback. It's particularly handy on long trips like the one from your car to the ticket counter.
Your breakfast, sir.
This new Kellogg's Frosted Bran is quite sensible. Crispy flakes with whole wheat and bran, slightly frosted for a taste that's delicious. I love it. I love it. Love it, love it, love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. I love it. And new Kellogg's Frosted Bran has less sugar than you'd imagine, but the taste, it's out of...
We've got to stop serving this.
New Kellogg's Frosted Bran, wildly delicious.
Coming up next on The Update, a ticket for eating ice cream stirs up a giant protest tonight by striking Kroger workers. We'll take you there. New developments tonight in the search for a missing 10-year-old. We'll have complete coverage. And meet the woman whose desperate act shocked her doctors. She tried to remove her breast implants. All next on The Update.
Tuesday, action! Oprah takes it to primetime and goes backstage with Dustin Hoffman.
I was really so sexually obsessed.
Settle down!
Now can I talk about Goldie?
Meryl Streep and Goldie Hawn.
Darn you!
And soulful songwriter Michael Bolton.
What about this hair?
Oprah Winfrey behind the scenes Tuesday.
Now for a look at one of the stories we'll have for you next week, a primetime exclusive.
John F. Kennedy Jr. and his sister Caroline talked to Jay Shadler as they prepare to present the 1992 Profile in Courage Award, honoring their father's legacy.
People said, well, you'll never be able to find anybody.
With political courage.
Right, with political courage today.
I, John Fitzgerald Kennedy. On the eve of their father's 75th birthday, the children of President John F. Kennedy reflect on his life.
One of the reasons why he remains a figure that captures our imagination is that his life was uncompleted and his work was uncompleted.
They'll share some of their memories.
It was a lot of fun. I remember, going out on the boat, a lot of happy sort of family times.
And look to the future.
Have you ever had any desire to follow your father's footsteps into politics?
Jay, no one's ever asked me that question before.
That's next week on Prime Time.
Now let's check in with Ted Koppel for a preview of tonight's Nightline. Ted?
Sam, later on Nightline, we'll look at the new power of home video. It sees all and everyone and never bats an eye. Tonight, questions about America's new star witness, when seeing should be believing and when it shouldn't. Diane?
That's Nightline. Don't forget 2020 tomorrow night. And until we see you again, I'm Diane Sawyer in New York. Good night to you, and good night, Sam.
Good night, Diane. I'm Sam Donaldson in Washington. Yes, join us again next Thursday night for another edition of Primetime Live.
For a transcript, please send $5 to 1535 Grand Street, Denver, Colorado, 80203.
Primetime is a presentation of ABC News. More Americans get their news from ABC News than from any other source.
America's watching ABC.
So you're out of school, you have a job, and you need some transportation. Something self-propelled, something you can afford. But you don't want a woofer. You want a Dodge Shadow ES. It looks great. Man, it's got a whole lot of stuff. Yes! And with $1,000 cash back, this coupe's only $98.78. Dodge Shadow ES, with or without a top. See your nearest Dodge dealer today.
Your house looks so nice. Where'd you get all this neat stuff?
Great food, guys.
Where did you get it?
You always find something so unique. Oh, no. Hello, Spiffy Maids?
The Ameritech Pages Plus Yellow Pages, how you get things done.
Every bud, every blossom. We'll help you from the ground up with everything you want to grow and everything you don't. Showing you the way like no one else. Ortho. It's our nature to help.